Hi, friends. I'm here today for another interview to discuss some of the themes in my forthcoming book, Chronic Hope, Raising a Child with Chronic Illness with Grace, Courage, and Love. And the book comes out on April 13th, but the ebook is already available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. If you've missed any of these earlier videos, you can catch up with all of them on my YouTube channel and also on my website, bonnieoneil.com. Well, today I'm with my good friend, Laura Hayes, and Laura and I have known each other for over 30 years since our husbands were business school students at the same university in Massachusetts. And her son, Ryan, was diagnosed with autism at age 2. And he is now 26 years old, and he lives with Laura and her husband, Rick. They also have a 28-year-old daughter and a 24-year-old son. And Laura was a teacher before dedicating herself full-time to raising her children. And she, for 24 years now, has run her son's home-based learning program, including the training of many tutors, assisting Ryan's behavioral consultants with program development and implementation, and making learning stimuli that was specific to her son. She's been a tireless advocate for timely and appropriate services for the autism community and an activist for vaccine awareness and choice. She has recently moved to Virginia, where she lives and works a sustainable farm that provides much of the food that she enjoys cooking and baking for her family. So I'm so glad you're here today, Laura. There is so much to talk about, and I'm going to try to keep us on track. But I know I want to hear about how you've managed caregiver fatigue over the years, not just the physical exhaustion, but that emotional fatigue of caregiving day after day after day. But let's first begin with physical exhaustion. Because I know when Ryan was diagnosed, you had 3 children under age 4, which, I mean, that's just an exhausting statement right there. But then you had on a diagnosis of autism when your husband was in a job that required significant travel, every single week being gone. So what was it like for you in those early days and years to deal with all of that physical exhaustion of managing everything that you had?
Well, one thing I like to say is I'll never be young enough to do it again, but you just do it when you make the choice to have children. At least when I did, I took that very seriously, and that just became my reality. 24/7 caring for our 3 children. And when we found out there was a problem with Ryan, I just got right on it, found out what was available in our greater Sacramento area, and began the interview process, and quickly hired a tutor team and just plunged into that. I knew I wanted to be in that room during those shifts so I could learn how to help our son. So I quickly had to hire a caregiver for our other 2 children. I had an infant, and our daughter had just turned 4 when we started Ryan's program, and we didn't have any family nearby or in the state. So I had to rely on others. So I hired help, and it was just very busy. The always having people in our home, getting used to that is physically exhausting.
Yeah.
Ryan was in tutor shifts once we got the program up and running, 6 to 7 days a week at the beginning, because what we found is if we took a day off, he would forget what he'd learned the whole week preceding that. So at the very beginning, we ran his program 7 days a week, and eventually that filtered down over the years to 6 days. But having people in your home for 50 plus hours a week it's exhausting. They're in your space. You've invited them in, you need them, and you need their help, but it is very different to have people in your home all the time, and then kind of training them and managing what they're doing with your son and making sure that that is going well and how you want it to go. And then also paying plenty of attention to your other 2 children and managing their activities and making sure they're getting the love and attention that they need.
Yeah.
And then your spouse, making sure you have some time with your spouse. And that's the tricky one when the kids are very little and dependent on you for meals and diaper changes. And So it was physically exhausting, but I have to say, you know, the Lord provided. I somehow was able to forge on and still had friends and a social life, maybe different than we would have if we didn't have a child who had so many challenges, but we still made it a priority to get out and spend time with friends and take trips and see families, our families. So a lot of juggling and a lot of planning, but I was
Yeah, you
younger then
mentioned
and had all that energy.
yeah, thank God for being young, right? At
Yeah,
that point. I thought that was so interesting that you mentioned having all of the Ryan's tutors and all the therapists and everybody on the team in your home. And I think one of the things when we have a child with a chronic illness is it can be a very private thing. And you go out, at least in my case, we would go out for all of the treatment and the medical appointments. But then being in the home was just us, and it was still and it was quiet, and you could kind of catch your breath. That must have been very challenging, where the home then becomes sort of the medical space and you can't catch your breath.
it is the treatment zone and your other children. It impacts their lives when they have friends over. There may be times where you have to ask them to play outside or play quietly, or your brother's in program, you guys need to keep it down. It really, he was our front burner child at that point. I kind of have picked up using that term over the years. And when he was really little and we were running that intensive program, and we just had such hope that we could, if we worked hard enough, we could, quote, fix him. And when
Yeah.
I first heard about the program we did, it was called a low-VOS program. And the first thing I read was, you know, if you stick to this program in 2 years, your child can be fully matriculated into a typical kindergarten classroom with no aid. Well, and my first thought was, well, if it takes other people 2 years, I'm going to get this done in 18 months. And I was quickly humbled. Let me tell you, I realized pretty soon in that that was not going to be the case. And Ryan, at age 26, coming up on 27, he is still like a child in many ways in a man's body. He's 6 feet 4 inches tall, 180 pounds, looks fairly typical, and yet he is a boy. He must be supervised and directed and assisted throughout the day. I can't even leave him if I wanted to go for a run or run to the grocery store. He can't be left. It would be as neglectful as leaving a young child. He could not care for himself in an emergency or do what would need to be done. And he just needs direction. That's one of the features of autism, is just kind of a lack of what's called executive functioning, organizing his day. So I sometimes will move from activity to activity, but I kind of typically will direct him. Okay, you've worked on your puzzle for a while. You know, now let's play a game. Now let's get out the paints. It is like having a young child that needs assistance and direction and activities provided all day long, and meals and assistance with hygiene. And
How have you handled over the years the weight of that? It's almost 24/7 unless we're all tucked into bed, but year after year after year of always having to think about what does Ryan need next, and how long has he been at this particular activity, and when is it time to move him on to something else? How have you experienced that sort of level of fatigue as a caregiver?
so when he was younger and we had a lot of help in the house, a lot of, you know, the tutor team running full speed, that was, as I said, exhausting, the constant training and being involved in that programming and making a stimuli. But even more exhausting at that point was, autism is unique in that everything is a battle. If you have a child, you know, I'll even use your child's example, type 1 diabetes, there's just something different. People, oh, he needs insulin and he needs these doctor appointments, and we'll make these accommodations, and we'll train the nurse and the teacher at school. There's something very unique and unfortunate about the world of autism. Everything is a battle. Those who are supposed to help you, their favorite word is no. So in California, we have regional centers, and there were responsible for funding the programs of these children. Ryan was 1.5 months into his program as a 2-year-old, and they wanted to cut the whole thing. They just said, oh, in these first 2 months, he hasn't made enough progress. He's 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so the battle, to keep his program going, and then you move in and you get the battles with the school district, and even with your medical professionals. That's a whole different ball of wax with autism, because many of us believe it was the medical professionals who caused our children's autism. So, we have to find special medical professionals who believe as we do and want to help our children heal from the harm that they endured at the hands of doctors. So, and that may require lots of travel, and almost everything we do, we pay for out of pocket. So all those battles, battle against the funding agencies, against the school districts, with your health insurance company, because they don't pay for anything that your child needs. Those battles are what were really exhausting and soul stripping.
Mm-hmm.
And then to see, we had one mom.
How did you handle that? Like, what did you do for yourself to avoid staying locked in a place of anger and frustration? How did you navigate the muck of the emotions that are completely understandable, but yet are not healthy for us over a long haul?
I became an advocate and an activist. I just said, I'm not going to stand for this. So I fought, and Ryan probably has had the longest running home program ever, fully paid for. And that's because I fought year in and year out for that. And I helped other parents to get timely and appropriate services for their children. I went to bat against these people who are not following the law, who are not doing their jobs, who are not providing the services. I hook people up with medical professionals who can and will help their child and the injuries they've endured. So I just got active. I am not.
It's so helpful. I know for myself as well that being involved as an advocate for research and for fundraising and just for better care and affordability has been so helpful for me. And it changes things. It really does change things. And when you see that laws change and that people have greater access, then it's encouraging and it helps you want to do more.
Unfortunately, with autism, despite all the work that so many of us have done for 3 decades now, the situation unfortunately is not better, despite our tireless efforts. The programming is not individualized. Because autism has become so incredibly pervasive, there are now school-based programs. And unfortunately, a little child with autism does not learn in a group setting. So, but that is all that is offered. So, and that which is what I feel causing the autism epidemic continues. I thought when I first started educating others and doing interviews back in the 90s, I thought, oh my goodness, once we get this information out there, it's going to stop. This hurting of children in this way will stop. And I'm horrified to say, almost 30 years later, that it hasn't stopped. It has not slowed down. And it's just terrible. So it may be different in the type 1 diabetes as far as you making change or getting better help or affordability, but unfortunately that is not the case in the world of autism. Things have actually not gotten better, despite the fact that we have so many children and families impacted by this. And it's an expensive disability to treat. And that's another, because what they need is so intensive and personalized, and you can't just throw them in a group setting. So the costs are truly astronomical. And the care over a lifetime for a child with autism is in the multi-millions. So, and they don't earn their own living and they don't contribute to the tax base. So it's very costly, not only to the individual, but to the family, the community, and our nation at large, yet we don't address it properly.
Well, so Ryan still lives with you. And you said that when you started his first program, you were optimistic that he would, things would just be sorted out in 18 to 24.
It was going to beat the average.
So when did you first realize that that what you had hoped for was not going to be the case, and that Ryan would indeed be living with you for all of his life. When did you first realize that, and how did you receive that, and how have you processed it emotionally in the time since?
Yeah, I think it didn't take that long into an intensive home program for him that I realized he he has been harmed in a way that is permanent. He has suffered some catastrophic brain damage and nervous system damage and immune system damage and gastrointestinal damage. This is, as my friend, I have a dear friend who's been at this as long as I have, and her one saying is, "You can't unbreak China."
Mhm.
And although Ryan's made a lot of progress, believe me, the child has made amazing progress, but that's comparing the apple to the apple. When you compare the apple to the orange and a typical almost 27-year-old man, there is no comparison. Ryan didn't graduate from high school. Ryan doesn't drive and never will. Ryan does not work and will never hold down a job. He's not capable. Ryan's never even gone on a first date. Ryan will not get married. Ryan does not use the phone. Ryan doesn't have friends. Ryan will not have children. So his independence, the life he should have had, I feel was robbed from him. Um, you know, as you mentioned at the beginning, I work hard for parental rights and medical choice freedom, including the choice to choose or reject vaccines, because we feel Ryan's life was shattered by his, quote, routine childhood vaccinations from 2 months to 2 years of age. So, so when I realized this child is not, no matter how hard I work, he's not going to turn into that typical independent adult who leads a typical and independent adult life. It's just slowly, it kind of just slowly starts to dawn on you, but I didn't really have trouble accepting that. I am a realist. I don't lament and look back. It's like, this just is what it is. So this is what we need to deal with. And we've always dealt that way with it within our family. And so therefore other children have always been wonderful with him, have, our daughter and son-in-law have built their new house to accommodate Ryan as he gets older. And should we go before he does, they have made a first floor bedroom for him.
Oh,
So there's
beautiful.
a lot of love for
Yeah.
him. He and Ryan brings much joy to all of us. He is sweet, sweet, sweet. He is adorable. He he just today, before I did this interview, we were just playing Skip-Bo with him right before you and I got on this Zoom call, and he's just giddy today. Happy boy. He is content most of the time. We did go through a rough patch from age 20 to 24 that was very uncharacteristic of him, but God pulled us through that, and he's back to being very joyful and happy. He's easygoing. He just requires that we be there and direct him. So it's tiring in that way, but he is very sweet and good-natured. And the one thing about caregiver fatigue kind of changing from when he was younger to now that he's older, in addition to kind of just always have this extra person that you have to factor in, that you can't do anything spontaneously yourself or with your husband. You've got to, if I need to have a hair appointment, and I don't want to bring Ryan, I have to find someone who can watch him.
Yeah.
Lunch with a friend, if my husband and I want to go on a date, any of that, we have to plan ahead of time. There's no spontaneity. But I think one of the hardest things is this whole empty nester, watching many of our friends in Christmas cards talk about we're empty nesters, and that's just something every once in a while I can get a little stab of pain.
Yeah.
Because we are not going to ever be empty nesters. Because we've also made the decision that we want Ryan to stay with us. We could put him in a group home, get on a list and do that, but we don't have any desire to. It is our desire to, and that's always been the point of our working so hard when he was young. It's like we just want Ryan to keep learning, to be content, and to have the behaviors and skills so that he can remain with us.
Yeah.
And that is one reason that we worked so hard. We want him to live with family members until the day he dies.
Yeah. Well, so you guys recently moved from California to Virginia, big move, and your daughter and son-in-law were already there. And so now you all get to share life together, which is beautiful. In Chronic Hope, I talk about how changing our routines for our children can be very difficult for many children with a chronic condition. And so how have you experienced that with Ryan, whether maybe perhaps in the move from California to Virginia or anything else? And how did you help your son to just trust you when a change was required?
Right. So we're very fortunate in that Ryan is not super rigid or inflexible, as can be a feature of autism, where he has never shown that type of he can be perseverative and do the same things and say the same things over and over until you think you might go a little crazy. He's in that, but he's not inflexible. He likes new experiences. He loves to travel. He loves community outings. So I didn't worry so much about the move, but since we've moved, it's almost been a year now. It's interesting to see Ryan still processing it, or where there have been some areas of confusion. I'm sure at the beginning, he probably just thought this was some type of a vacation. We moved into an apartment first as our house is having some work done on it. And then I think I would, and we use a calendar. So I always tell him what's coming up, but I think we've never moved. So I think the whole thing was kind of foreign, like, what does this mean? But for many months when I'd say, get me some books to read to you, he'd bring out, all of his Sesame Street or Arthur or Franklin books, whatever, that had to do with moving.
Oh,
Someone moves to a new home.
yeah.
So he processes that way, trying to understand. And then for a while, he would repetitively say our old address in California. And just nonstop. And only slowly did he start working in our new address. And now he rarely says the old one. And I think, strange as that may sound, it was part of his processing. Now he'll talk about the people who bought our house in California. He'll bring up their last name and I'll say, that's right, they bought our home. It's their home now. This is our new home. And then he'll say our new address. So I think there was some processing and some type of a realization, like, oh, this isn't temporary. We've been to Virginia before to visit, his sister, but this time we're not going back to California. So I think he just had to live through it, but he has adjusted truly more wonderfully than I could have thought. And especially with my not having help here.
Yeah.
And
Well,
some
it sounds
days
like you've helped him really well in that process and allowing him to, recognizing that the books he wants to read are books about moving, and allowing him to repeat the address and to sort of take that on. And that's beautiful. I remember this one time years ago. Ryan was little, and I think you wrote it in a Christmas letter, and I won't get the words exactly right, but you said something like, of all the people who could have been chosen to raise your son, you were thankful that it was you, because you knew that you would do everything in your power to give him the best life possible. And I remember that really striking me, and it stuck with me. And I revisited that sentiment many times after my son was diagnosed with type 1. And so thank you for that, because that it was just very well said, and helps us to reframe what could be like, well, why did I have to get this difficulty in my life? You reframed it as the fact that you and Ryan get to share life together is a gift. So, like, how did you come to that, and how has that helped you find hope and joy in your own journey?
Well, I could not wait to be a mother back in the day. And so I was going to love whatever children God chose to give me. And so, I just loved him from the moment I found out I was pregnant with him. And I think when you have a child who has special needs or has challenges, your love just grows. You want to help them. You want to protect them. You want to care for them. You want to make sure that they're going to be loved by others and included. So it just kind of became my mission. This is whom God gave me. So this is, and he's a delight. You know, we love Ryan. You know, we have since he was born. So, and it doesn't mean there aren't challenges and exhaustion, and there are days where you have your little pity party and cry in the shower. I'm sick of this, or I need a break, or I can never just go out and do what I want to do when I want to do it, or I'm
Yeah.
sick of brushing and flossing my teeth every night and his. It's tiring, you know. I'm sick of
Right?
making him he's big, he eats a lot, you know, cooking him 5 meals a day, and it is tiring. But then I'm also, like I said, just a realist. It is what it is. So I get over my little, every once in a while, twice a year, little pity party, and just, this is what it is. And this is my life. Everyone, I've also learned, you know, everyone has their challenges. Everyone has their crosses to bear. And and it's just not that uncommon in today's world. As you and I were talking before the interview started, we are in a whole new time in history where there is unfortunately so much chronic illness and developmental disability in childhood. It's not normal, and started about 3 decades ago, and we as a nation and the world are not dealing with it very well. There are lots of things we could do to curb these childhood issues, and we're not. So that's what keeps me going too. That's one of the things that gives me hope is like you, I write, I speak, and I educate others. And I'm so encouraged when I receive emails and letters or phone calls of appreciation. Thank you for helping me to spare my children from what your child has gone through. And that keeps me going. You can help one person, that's a great feeling to carry with you your whole life. And I've been given the platforms and opportunities to help a lot more than one. So that gives me hope. You know, we all want a better world for our children. And so God has given me a part to play in that. And I try to follow his lead.
That's great. Oh gosh. Well, Laura, it has just been great catching up with you today.
Same, I agree.
And, just speaking with you about finding hope in and finding emotional strength as we care for our children with chronic illness. So once again, my forthcoming book, Chronic Hope, Raising a Child with Chronic Illness with Grace, Courage, and Love, is available now on Kindle and Nook, and can be pre-ordered on Amazon and Barnes & Noble for an April 13th release date. So hop on over to my website, bonnieoneal.com, for 2 free advanced chapters of Chronic Hope, and also for a special gift for pre-ordering the book. Well, thanks for tuning in. Keep checking in on social media and on my website for more interviews to come, and take care of each other, and we'll see you soon. Bye.